Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Noble Company podcast. I am your host, Roanne Smith. This podcast is dedicated to contemporary topics in business and will feature experts, entrepreneurs, and academics from across the globe. As most of you know, this is February, Black History Month, and in many Caribbean countries, it's African Awareness Month. And so I thought it would be a good time for us to have a conversation about being Black within the business space. And so today we've chosen a topic. It's called Black Entrepreneurship in White Spaces. So at this time, I will introduce you to my guests. Let me get them on screen. Okay, hi everybody.
Hi, good evening.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. All right. So let me start to introduce the guests. I'll go ladies first. Sharita Odell. She's a former Olympian and a real estate broker, a dynamic motivational speaker, and has executive produced several TV and radio productions. She has been famously featured on HGTV more than once, I believe, and is a regular fixture on our local television station where she provides weekly real estate advice. Sharita is fluent in Spanish and holds a master's in business administration with specializations in marketing and HR. She's determined to live a purpose-driven life, and with God at the helm, she hopes to inspire as many people as possible, to have life and live it more abundantly. John 10:10. Welcome, Sharita.
Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Next, I'll go to Terry. Terry Street is Bajan born and bred and has been living in the US for over 20 years. She's previously owned and operated an upscale nail and beauty spa in Brooklyn, New York for 4 years. And currently she co-owns the Rogers Garden, which is a Caribbean rum bar in Brooklyn, New York, which has boasted well-known patrons such as Cass, Super Cat, Misty Copeland, and London Brown, amongst other celebrities. Terry has a master's in business administration and has worked in banking for over 20 years in the areas of marketing, acquisitions, and executive management assistant roles. Thanks so much, Terry.
Thank you for having me, Roanne. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Darius Sofia. Darius, I really should have asked you how to pronounce it.
Yeah,
you can just tell me now.
It's Darius Setsafil.
Okay, Darius Setsafil. He is a British-born photographer and videographer with African parentage. He is the owner of DS Media, and it is his passion to capture visually stunning and emotive pieces from around the world. Darius provides his services for weddings, family gatherings, as well as personal and corporate shoots. He is based in Newcastle upon Tyne, but his work takes him across the UK and beyond. Darius has a bachelor's in advertising and a master's in creative and cultural industries management. Welcome, Darius.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you. Now, finally, we have Dr. Watts, who is a lecturer in marketing and entrepreneurship at the University of the West Indies, Cape Hill campus. He's one of my former lecturers, and now I would say a good friend. He is a coordinator of the Masters in Marketing program and is credited for his constant emphasis on innovating and changing the program to meet the demands of the regional marketing professional. As an expert in entrepreneurship and business planning, He's offered consultative advice to small businesses, primarily under the auspices of the Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme of Barbados. He's also a consultant for business planning and preparation for K-Field students in the SEED program, which is an entrepreneurial program. And he's won several national awards, National Prime Minister awards, for his work in entrepreneurship. His thesis, his PhD thesis, was actually entitled Black Commercial Underrepresentation in Barbados. Thank you for being here, Dr. Walks.
Thanks for having me, and I hope that I really make a useful contribution.
I know you will, Dr. Walks. You're one of the smartest persons that I know. I say that all the time. So let's begin. Now, there's an article that I came across. It was from 2018 in Barbados Today. So it's June 18th, 2018. And it quoted Dr. Dawn Marshall, the director of Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies, as saying, whenever we are talking about race and business, it is important to understand the enterprise culture of that place. And the enterprise culture in Barbados is that of commercial dealing business. And when Blacks try to get into those areas, they stumble upon a well-established, wealthy class of persons who have experienced intergenerational wealth going back hundreds of years. Now, Dr. Walks, you would have done your research in Black underrepresentation in business in Barbados. Does that ring true for you? Is that what your results would have found?
Okay, no, that was one of the problems. Of course, there were a number, there were a multitude of issues and so on. That being one of them, because one thing that is known that you have to understand is you can't expect to create an entrepreneurship class in one or two generations. So quite often, that is one thing that a lot of persons come up against, and also something that the public they do not understand because they normally berate Black businesses, and there are people folks that know come town that only had a business 10, 20 years, and comparing them against a person's who were in business 60, 70, 100, 200 years. So that is a problem, yes.
Okay. And Sharita, so again, the article was speaking about entrepreneurship in Barbados. You are a real estate agent in Barbados. And as we discussed, I think it was earlier this week, there is a shift toward more Black real estate agents in Barbados, but a lot of the large real estate agencies are white owned. Would you say that has been your experience in real estate?
Yes, certainly. When I was in secondary school, furthermore college, I never envisioned Blacks and real estate in Barbados going hand in hand, sadly. When I would have started, there would have been several real estate agencies, let's say comprising anywhere between 3 to 10 agents. And there was no way that a Black could have really got in among, the population that existed. They just were not many. However, there were those Black stalwarts who were around from inception that I laud them. For example, Alton Curtin, George Ramsey. They would have been in from very early days and they stuck around. And I think because of their presence, persons still had the hope that maybe they too could get into the inner sanctum, so to speak. But overall, it was very heavily white or mulatto dominated for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Sharita.
Yeah, so no, that's essentially it. Now in recent times, I think because people look and see someone looking like them, it is more attainable, more uh, people are more willing to try. So for that reason, you find that a lot of the younger agents are indeed blacks, um, and they have been able to penetrate the market in terms of being a part of various agencies, which for a long time would not have had a high black roster. So the times have changed for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Okay. And I just want to remind our viewers that we're open to your questions and comments. So, please feel free to message us in the chat. If you'd like what you're hearing, send us some love. Um, we want to hear from you. Okay, so thanks, Sharita and Terry. Now, you have a very interesting perspective as a Bayesian and also somebody who has lived in the US for so many years. And I came across a quote by Martin Luther King that says, "When Negroes assertively moved on to ascend the second rung of the ladder, a firm resistance from the white community developed." Has this been your experience as an entrepreneur in the US?
Okay, well, first, I just want to make a correction. I've actually been living in this country. This year will be 37 years.
Oh,
I know you had said 20 years, but I have been in this country for 37 years, but I still a Bajan, okay? I still, when people say Barbados, I say, yeah, home. Home. So I would say that my experience is a little of the reverse. I lived in the Prospect Heights area in Brooklyn for many years, and it's an area that's being developed. Well, back then was being developed and very gentrified, becoming very gentrified. And so when I first opened my nail and beauty spa, there was a lot of resistance from the community. I was first to market in the area. I was bringing something new to the area that they've never had before. It was actually called Posh. And so I tried to bring an experience that people had in Manhattan, in the city, where they had the luxury salons. The area that I targeted that I lived in never had anything like that. So like I said, it was first to market. And because of the quality of service that I was offering, the prices had to also adjust for that kind of service. A lot of people in the community were very used to going to what I would call the Chinese chop shop, and getting a really, really, really good service that ended really badly a lot of times in health issues for them. I wanted to get our community away from that and offer something that was of value, but it came with a service price. So I kind of thought that my Black community would support a little more, but the pushback was actually coming from them, comparing prices against quality. And I realized early I had to target the whites that were coming in the area. Because they would be the ones that would appreciate it, because that's what they're used to from Manhattan and where they're coming from, and they're looking for these kind of services. So I made sure that as a targeted population, I gave them the same services, the same quality when they walked in. They were greeted with a glass of champagne or a glass of wine. They had jazz music playing in the background. They had a television if they wanted to, watch a certain thing. And I got a lot of support from the actual white community. Once the Black community realized that the white community was supporting a Black woman, then they felt like they almost needed to do the same, try the service, give it a chance. And then I began to acquire a lot of the Black community as well, who was then very happy and would say, "Oh my God, we really needed this here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much." So that's why I say my experience is a little more reverse, because I didn't have to push back from the white community. I had it actually from our own Black community, but I was able to target the services to the white community in order in order to acquire them as patrons. And do you
Okay.
want to talk about my
Thanks for that, Terry.
Okay.
Pardon,
Well,
sorry?
no, I'm sorry. I said a lot. I wasn't sure if you want to talk about my experience with the bar, because the bar is also a very similar experience.
Well, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, and also with the bar, we are one of the few Caribbean rum bars in Brooklyn, New York. You would have to go to the Williamsburg areas of New York, which is the very expensive areas in Brooklyn, to find a Caribbean rum bar, or you would have to go into Manhattan again. And so we launched a Caribbean rum bar. And so we had to set very, very high standards in order to acquire the Black community as well as the white community. And so we basically had to make sure that we had a setting that everyone appreciated, as well as the drinks, cocktail Caribbean real drinks, because as we know, people love to travel, and the white community loves to go to the Caribbean. So it was very important to match that, so that they wouldn't have pushback on this business and say, "Oh, you're trying to do something that Williamsburg is doing. Oh, you're trying to do something that Manhattan is doing. Oh, I go to the Caribbean, but I'm not feeling any of that, and you are not doing this right," and kind of turn up their nose. Instead, we were able to, give the services, the cocktails that are needed, the ambiance that's needed. And people, including the white community, instead of pushing back, they were like, "We love this. I feel like I'm in Barbados right now in this garden. I feel like I'm in Jamaica. I feel like I'm in Grenada." And then our local Caribbean people that experience the Caribbean, whether they live there or first or second generation, when they come, they would always say, "I feel like I'm home."
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. We have a question from Markland O'Connor. I'll just put it here on the screen. Okay. I'm having a bit of a challenge.
It had showed up earlier. All right, is there again?
Is the pushback in Barbados?
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, is the pushback in Barbados from the Black community as well? Sharita.
Ah, boy. It is amazing what social constructs you see just by being in the business that I am in. And to be honest with you, this is not about bashing any race or putting one over the other or anything like that, but just merely about observations. When I came onto the scene, I had to work so hard to be seen as credible. Whereas, I have my license, I would have done my studies and so forth, had all my different degrees, the sales certificate, this, that, and the other. And I had to work hard to be taken seriously. However, there were those who would have come into agencies who might have been a cousin of someone who was there already, or, a friend or a sister, different complexion. And what they said pertaining to property or whatever was taken as gospel. It was never questioned, because it was almost colorized that once you were white, you in real estate, you knew what was going on. Whereas me, as Miss Black Girl, now trying to build my business, well, I gotta give her some years before we trust was coming out of her mouth. And that was the reality I lived in. Um, I have seen some counterparts go and advise persons on pricing and stuff, which was way wrong to their detriment. But because it was coming from a white voice, it was taken as, okay, I guess that's the price it is. Whereas if the same price were coming from me, you trying to make me give away my property, right? And these are real life social constructs that you see. I can't make it up. But sadly, because I think a lot of perceptions have been in our people's minds for obviously developed over hundreds of years, and it allows them to see through different lens dependent on your hue, particularly in my industry. So yes, pushback from Blacks in Barbados is a very real thing in my career.
I've just got a quick question. Do you feel like you have to fight to come across as professional? You're doing double the efforts to show that you're of that credible level. Because I feel the same, that I have to do that. I always have to make sure that I'm on time, I'm like documented everything and stuff like that, just to be like seen as, I can actually do the job.
Yes, indeed. And it is real. It is real. You have to prove yourself every day I wake up and I'm going out there to list property with my Blacks. I have to bring it. And yes, it's a matter of professionalism across the board, but it goes way, it is deeper than that, because a lot of it is subliminal. A lot of it is, constructs created over perceptions that they've had in their head for years. And as one of the panelists say, that's not something that you can break overnight. It's embedded in our people, so proving myself over and over again has been necessary for me to get where I am, where I'm taken seriously. Where sadly, as I said, I've seen it, if I were white, not necessarily knowing as much as I do, and I came out from another agency to speak to you, I would not have to try so hard to prove myself.
I totally agree with you. Like I'm in the same kind of predicament every day. I'm technically a freelancer, and I have to fight for every job that I get. And it's really funny because sometimes I give someone a quote at the price that I deemed, value of my service, and they're not always happy with the price. As Terry says, that you need to target the price to certain type of people, but then they'll go and ask others, and it'll come round because people know that my creative style and just my ideas is very much different than everybody else around us. So it's like people want the quality. Okay, I can give you the quality. Why would you not give me my price? Is it because I'm not professional enough? These are the questions that I start asking myself. But it's very hard to move in spaces because in the UK everything's very subtle. It's not very abrasive in your face. So I always say it's surgical. So you don't actually really know if that's the reason. Am I not skilled enough? I always doubt myself. But my internal belief is that I'm always going to make it. I'm always going to push myself. But you always have that in the back of your mind, regardless of what space you're in.
But like jumping just briefly, I don't want to say too much. In terms of that issue, yes, and it would happen because when I did my research, I also found that there's a certain perception about blacks as it relates to business, as it relates to their abilities. And as the audience as the other panelists have been, often did you find that blacks have that perception of blacks? Now, interestingly enough, that is not by accident. If you check the But if you check religion, if you check the no, but if you check natural sciences, if you check philosophy, one team it came out right into the 20th century. Blacks are inferior. Now, many people speak about because I was even seeing an article now, recently which dealt with this issue with Genesis chapter 9 and verse but 26 that said, "I'm cursed be Canaan," and then you hear about this Hamitic curse. And folks actually believe that blacks are a cursed race. No, the interesting thing is, if you listen to blacks speak, even now, it comes over in a way that it's not that they're recycling up front because it's not that they're not because it has started to like they don't. You hear blacks and saying things like, "I think that's something wrong with we," or I've heard blacks saying, "I don't know, but it seemed to be a curse somehow." And there's this thing among blacks that we ourselves have some issues because we were actually taught that, but it's not us, but it means our grandparents and parents, and our grandparents and parents pass on their beliefs, ideas, and perceptions to us. So that's why you still hear about good hair. If God created all of us, He couldn't have created good hair and bad hair. You just hear about nice nose and all these junk ideas, which don't just mean white. And the interesting thing is, what have been found worldwide is good-looking entrepreneurs have a better chance of success than those that are image challenged. Now, all of you y'all in here are good-looking, but if the standard of good-lookingness is white, all of us in here are ugly or image challenged. And that is what I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Do you know what? I do believe that our culture has the black culture has been affected and it's been changed, and I feel like from my own personal experiences is that our black culture we don't back each other. I feel like it's the only culture where we don't actually really back each other when it's someone that we know. If it's someone we don't know, we always root for that one person. So we're on the TV and you see that one black person, you're gonna root for them. We naturally do that. But when it's someone that we know, we I don't know what's within our culture that we don't want to back each other because for me personally, I always push up my friends, regardless if they're in business or career or in corporate. So I always push that as a person. But I realized that in the culture, it's like I will go to this person for this price for the culture if it's cheaper than what the white person is. Even if the quality is better, I always believe going with the white person is always like okay, but with a black person, I must get a discount. I don't know if it's just me in my sector. What about you guys?
Um, it's in any business sector.
Just wanted to make sure that.
Yes, it's in any business sector. Unfortunately, a lot of the Black community is always looking for what we call here in America the hookup, right? Right. You don't want to pay a fair value, for the quality that you're receiving because somehow um, we don't feel the need to totally support each other. Um, yes, there's a percentage of the Black community that will come and help. Like you said, any businesses my friends are doing, any even if it's in corporate, I'm one of their biggest proponents because as Black people, we have to help each other get ahead and we have to stop this crab in the barrel mentality. It's almost like we don't want each other to succeed. because somehow that person is going to be left behind. Grow with me, learn with me, support me, and I'm going to support you, because living in this country, we have not just whites, but nationalities of whites, right? And
Mhm.
they come together and support each other. Whether you're talking about people from Poland, people from Russia, people from the UK, people from
Mm.
Switzerland, no matter what country, Greece, wherever they're from, those populations come together and they support each other. And I see it also not just in the whites, I see it in the Jews, I see it
Yep.
in Indians, I see it in the
Yep.
Asians. All these cultures come together and they're like, yep, we're supporting each other, and they push each other in the head. They can come to this country with nothing, and a force of people are going to come around them and say, you know what, this is the business, this is how you get into it, put in your work. I don't care if you work 24 hours a day, they're not afraid to work 7 days
Mm.
a week, and this is where you live for now. And in 5-10 years, these people's lives change because they have the support of a community. But
Yeah.
I find that our Black community, it's improving. It certainly is improving. I was telling Rowan the other day in New York right now, especially since George Floyd incident, the big thing is, are you a Black owned business? Right?
Mhm.
That's a question that a lot of people will ask. Is this a Black owned business? Because you could have Black faces in there, but that doesn't mean you own it, right? Because a lot of times that's the experience. Black people may be managing it, Black people may be working it, but they don't own it. So Black people are becoming more aware of supporting their communities. So the question is this a Black owned business? If you say yes, and you have a good quality that you're providing, there's a lot of support from the Black community in New York City at
Terry,
this time. Yes.
Terry, I just want to jump in. I have a question from
Mhm.
Jerry Blendman that I think um, kind of segs into what you were talking about. But before we go there, one of the things that I want to mention is that I find it very interesting when persons talk about the fact that Black people exhibit this crab in the barrel behavior. When I was living in New Zealand, I remember I went to church and I heard the pastor talking about tall poppy syndrome. And tall poppy syndrome was exactly the same thing as crabs in a barrel. And he used it to describe the New Zealand population, which is primarily white. And so I say that to say that often there's negative characteristics that we ascribe to ourselves based
Mhm.
on our socialization and subsequent conditioning that aren't necessarily unique to us, but we think so because that's all we hear. But then, there are other people who are saying the same thing about themselves. So I just thought that was very interesting. And I have a question from Jerry.
Mhm.
It says, well, let me put it on the screen. There seems to be a kind of a delay when I put it on the screen. Could the formative education of Blacks to business, particularly as such relate to the importance of collaborative management of enterprise, be a factor impacting the advancing of Black businesses? As the academic amongst us, Dr. Watts, would you mind taking that question?
Okay, before I take it, let me say something because you keep on speaking with me as the academic. One thing is I referred to myself, as you know, as the as the academic who has really been reluctant because I did not go after a PhD. I ended up
Yeah.
with a PhD. Now, why I say that to is this: you might not be aware of this, but I have owned and I have been in a number of businesses over the years, and still have hired carriers. I was into poultry farming, and the last thing I had it was a consultancy, which I still do a little bit of, but not on big thing. Now, in terms of the particular question, now where it speaks, but this formative education of blacks to business, no, that is a factor. But let me say something about it. Now, because I also have to deal with what Rohan said briefly too, in but not to this question directly. What is known is this: most entrepreneurs they come out of families that were also business owners. Most successful entrepreneurs have that family background. Now, so that the other racial groups, the whites, the Indians, the other whoever, who might also have the same education as us in terms of schooling, have a different education at home, and so on, which have to account for their success. Now, I'll give you something that I have shared when I teach at certain institutions that deal with entrepreneurship. I have a friend that his mom used to be the maid for the Mahons. I don't know if y'all are aware of who are the Mahons in Barbados. Okay, the
I'm
Mahons
not.
are one of those six planter families that had formed plantations holdings, which used to be the second largest company in Barbados. No, the Mahons they virtually own St. Thomas, the same way that the Wards had virtually owned St. Lucie. The Mahons they virtually own St. Thomas. So, so his mom was the maid there, and she would come home and always tell them what happened there. And one story that she told a lot that he told me is this. Back then, the ice cream van, as such, y'all might be aware, it came around once a week on a Sundays mainly. The ice cream van, it would come around and it would go to St. Thomas and it would come one young Mahon children, extremely young, 5 years old or 6 years old, and say, Daddy, Daddy, I want an ice cream. And the father would say, but you hold it there. How much money in allowance did I give from you on Monday? The daddy, you gave me $5. How much is for an ice cream? $1. And the father would say, so what's your problem, son? And there's a man who could buy the whole ice cream truck and half of Barbados. But from the time that his son is 5 years old, he is being taught budgeting. From the time that his son is he is being taught things that the average black will never be taught, even at age 30. So that they have a different education at home that helps them to become a different type of business person. But no, by the time that young Mahon is 15 years old, guess what? He is already a business expert. He understands finance, he understands budgeting, he understands all sorts of things that you and I have never even been exposed to at even a much older age. So, all that we both have the same education, the formative education of those other persons at times is very different than ours. I hope that have answered your question, Mr. Lenman.
All right. And I think following on from that, Troy has a question. Troy Wickham. What are your views with the education system as it stands, and does it correlate with entrepreneurship? And I guess anybody can answer that question as it relates to their location.
Well, I could speak for New York to say that my experience in school here, even though I went as an adult, I worked after I graduated from high school and then went back to college as an adult. I worked full time and I went to school full time. I was able to complete, my degrees with being very focused. But I was exposed to entrepreneurship in college because our thesis was basically you had to create a business and you were graded on that. And for me personally, it was a great experience because that is where my seed of entrepreneurship was planted and grew. Can't speak for every college, but the college that I attended, maybe because it was a college more for business college for adults, and they maybe understood that people are at that age where they would appreciate having their own business and kind of be more focused on that path. But for me personally, in my college experience, it was a huge deal. Yes.
No. Okay.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Go ahead.
I was just going to jump in the back of that and just give a UK representation of like the education system, but also kind of linking to what you said, Doctor, in terms of there's a cycle here. It's almost an entrapment of the UK education system, because if you're like me, who came from two immigrants as parents, they had to work. They didn't get great jobs, but they had to work. So all the schooling that I did get was actually just only from school because my parents worked all the time. So that knowledge and teachings of like finances, mortgages, credit scores, lending, and all that was never taught in school. But because my parent had to work all the time, or sometimes even having two jobs, I didn't get that from anywhere. And there's nowhere to fill up the gap in the UK. So it's just a cycle that keeps kind of going, because once you leave school, you've either got to learn it by yourself, which is something that I've done. I've spent time and dedication to learning it myself. But without having that motivation, I'm not going to get that taught from anywhere else, even in the education system, which is my biggest kind of problem with the education, especially in the UK, especially with the correlation of young Black boys being excluded to them turning into gangs. And if we can, change the syllabus, change the way we engage with students. I've worked in a school full time as a volleyball coach, working as for a charity as well that helps mentoring kids from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I know that, yes, you do have some bad kids, but most of the time in the educated system is that everybody's just thrown to fit into a box. And you've got creative people like myself that feel like really oppressed by being in a box. I don't want to learn something that's not going to be weak relative to me. I want to learn, okay, how am I going to survive in the world? Where's my history from? Science, maths, English as well. Yeah, I do need that stuff as well. But it's the fact that in the education system, if we're not engaging our young people, regardless of culture, because we don't know what they're going to get given back at home. And that's a cycle that's in the UK of you're not getting taught at home. School's not teaching you what you need to learn to survive in the world. Okay, a gang member comes over and goes, hey, come, I'll teach you how to survive. And we go down that road. So we're not pushing them into businesses because, yeah, we all got taught how to make a business at college and in school, which is at the age of like 16 to 18 for the UK. But it wasn't engaging. There was no kind of way of getting the importance over to a young adult at that time living in one of these inner cities where you're going to have bad influences. So I feel the education system and the system of all your parents have to work regardless of where they come from is why there is a lack of representation in business and corporate industries, but also backing of Black businesses as well. So that kind of goes on from what you said, Doctor, but I just wanted to just give the view of the UK.
I also want to kind of pick up on that point. We have a question, and I think that this will kind of, before I put out that question, I want to kind of answer Sorry, I kind of just want to jump in here. So, Zethia, I see your question, and we're going to get to it soon. Now, Darius, you talked about where your parents came from, and the truth is, we all came from somewhere. As Black persons, we came from Africa, and some of us came under different conditions. So for persons who are from the Caribbean and the US, a lot of times we were transplanted there through the Atlantic slave trade with the UK. Yes, there was some slaves brought to the UK, but it was very minimal. The amount of Black people, the large influx of Black people into the UK actually came in the late 40s and the early 50s through mass immigration. And, they were brought in to do different types of jobs. And many of our foreparents went into that influx, particularly from the Caribbean. And one of the things, as someone who studies refugees as a part of my PhD, one of the things that I've learned is that there's a real big difference between being a refugee and being an immigrant. One has a choice as to where they go, and one doesn't. One is forced to leave their home. And even with slavery, there's a difference. So you're completely robbed of your identity. So you no longer have a name. You no longer have, you have your plantation owner's last name, or so you now have anglicized names, or some persons may have Spanish names or French names. You don't have your language. You don't know what tribe you're from. And so there's a lot that was stripped from our ancestors. And I wondered, given the different perspectives here, how do you think that has impacted the way that we see the world and that we do business?
Well,
Oh, no, go, please.
I can start by saying it boils down to fear of lots of insecurities and fear. You see, we're coming up against a situation where some races or some demographics have had entrepreneurship in their blood for years or whatever, whereas we have spent a long time after slavery just trying to get the basics, just trying to get food to eat however we could, just trying to get money to maintain accommodation, that type of thing. So you will find for that reason, when somebody then gets up and says, and we're talking, a few decades ago to 10 years ago, that, man, I'm going to start a business. Other Blacks will look on in horror, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
There's risk attached. What are you doing? We're all here taking the safe road. We're playing it safe, either with our government jobs or something that will give us a steady income. And because of that, for a long time, unless you were a shop in the shop business or whatever, which was part and parcel of the village life, even considering someone stepping out to own their own business, they never got the support of the masses because the masses just did not know how to relate to risk and relate to that self-belief that you could step out and thrive. I know when I was growing up that I was taught, like most Bajans, Black Bajans, that you get a good job, whatever good job is. You live this certain life, you aspire to the basic of a house with a picket fence, and you stay in that job without giving too much trouble for as long as you can, etc., etc. So I know in my instance, when in my early 20s, I'm talking about walking away from a job, I could see my mother and grandmother in inner hysteria, like, what are you doing? Because we had never been programmed to do anything that is risky. And what is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is all about risk taking. So if you have an entire race who has been programmed on playing it safe, just do what you have to do to maintain your basic needs and so forth, it goes contrary to what entrepreneurship is all about. So that's why I myself found it very difficult. I always had this itch inside of me to be a business person, but mentally it was difficult to break the chains that were there by society and all those around me because they couldn't relate. I had a mother and father who were in government for 30 years. How do you relate to a child who wants to step out and do what? Try business endeavors, and you're not guaranteed a paycheck every 25th, 26th of the month. So, yeah.
Darius, you wanted to add?
Um, how much do you guys shout about your successes? Because I feel as a culture, we don't. There's a lack of representation regardless of what we do. But I feel like if we don't kind of show our successes and that we can do it, that we don't. I think we have an obligation to do that for the next generation and pass on that knowledge. It's like, hey, for me, I personally don't feel I'm going to be super famous and super rich, but I'm going to own a business and I'm going to either struggle or be successful. But I'm going to show that I've done it, so you can do it. I've got other colleagues that I call them colleagues now that I've slowly mentored to say, look, you can do this. I even had a message from someone that was actually white saying, thank you, Darius, for helping change my life, because we both were working in a corporate business. And I was like, you're good at photography. Why don't you do it as a business? And he left because he was in a poor situation. And now he's doing his freelance stuff and he's very much more happier. And the corporate life is not for everyone, but there's still some success in it. But I just want to understand you, Terry, yourself in New York, how much do you shout about your success without it feeling like showing off?
So I'm the co-owner at the Rogers Garden in Brooklyn. It's myself and 3 others, 4 of us. The creative genius behind the Rogers Garden is my business partner, Garnett Phillip. Her creativity and her work ethic is the thing that made me want to partner with her. Because I don't know how to make a drink. I am in the back scenes. She's the one up front creating the menus, creating the ambiance, creating everything that's needed to make it the successful bar that it is. We launched in a pandemic. We had the nerve, July of 2020. And the first day, against all New York City rules, about 400 people showed up to an event that probably was not supposed to have more than 25 people, It was a rotation. But one of the things I love about my partner, Garnett, is she is that Black woman that shouts from the top of the mountain and shows her support for other Black businesses. And I love that. She was never afraid to be like, yeah, that person's on top. Yeah, that person's really doing their thing. And whenever that person was in the presence of a crowd, she's making sure she's shouting them out. And it has transitioned to our business because we have a huge following on social media, on Instagram. And just about every day or every other day, she is posting Black businesses, not just our business, in our stories, other Black businesses, whether it be coffee shops, restaurants, art studios, sneaker stores, bicycle shops. She is on there posting it, bigging them up and supporting them. And what happens is, if you're kind to people, more than likely they're going to be kind back to you. It's going to make them feel good. And so it comes back to us also, and we get that same support from them. But she's never afraid, because we actually had the conversation, let's be real, We've talked about, a few other Black businesses that we're always bigging up. We're always on there making sure we're engaged in what they're doing and whatnot. They would never come on our page and say, great job, a little like, engage, anything, and it's unfortunate, but that's who they choose to be. But that never stops us from continuing to support, because the more support we give just genuinely because we want all of our businesses to succeed, the more support we get in return also. So that's been my personal experience with that.
Okay. I would like to suggest about something briefly, because I'm trying not to be long. No, because all of us in here are from Barbados. Well, Rohan is kind of from Barbados, but anyhow. Oh, oops, sorry about that. Most of us in
As
here.
listen, Dr. Watts, I was born here. I have dual parent heritage, but I was born in Barbados.
Okay, I guess I'm from right. Right, but okay. The thing with Barbados is that in terms of the English-speaking Caribbean, something that a lot of people are not aware of is that Barbados is unique. Barbados is the only island in the English-speaking Caribbean that have poor whites. No other English-speaking island has poor whites. But something about that poor white population that most people in Barbados are not aware of. Around 1680, the population in Barbados was 50% white, 50% black. And almost all whites were poor whites. The amount of rich whites were the minority. How come it reversed that almost all whites are wealthy and the poor whites are a minority? No. That explains certain things in terms of how we ourselves are and how they are. And I'm going to explain it just quickly because I said I want to take long. If you go to Grenada, you will learn of a mountain, and all y'all can go online and check this. There's a mountain in Grenada called Mount Morris. We're ready to see, right? Terry, shaking her. If you go there, the people
I
have
go to
names
Grenada quite often.
like right, Bass, and Calamore, and so on. Almost the whole mountain is white. They're all Belgians, and a lot of them still speak like Belgians. If you go to St. Vincent, you hear about the Baxter Belgians. White people, almost all of them are white. Some of them still have a Belgian accent. Almost all the whites in the other islands are from Barbados. That is how come that our white population fell. No, it didn't by accident that it fell. The wealthy whites around the end of the 1800s actually shipped them out of Barbados. Literally shipped them out of Barbados for a reason. Those whites, no, but if y'all read the history of Barbados and you read about like Schomburg and all those early historians, they speak about these whites that were lazy, a bunch a bunch of alcoholics. The women were merely prostitutes. And you don't can check any history book and you don't come across that. No. The wealthy whites, they recognize that having a big set of poor whites, it pulls down their profile. It makes it like the whites are not universally successful. So the wealthy whites are who bought that mountain that you went to in Grenada. They bought it. It's not just and shipped them there. They bought land in St. Vincent and all to the Caribbean to get rid of these poor whites, and that's why we know that the poor whites are only mean that white population is slightly less than 4% of our population. Now here's the point I'm making just quick, the black population of Barbados is the only normal population. Meaning a normal population is going to stretch from poor to wealthy, is going to come across all the different groups. Because they got rid of the poor whites, the white population in Barbados is an artificially wealthy population. They only kept the business class in Barbados, mainly them. If you have a business class, they're going to shout at each other. They're going to cooperate. And first, obviously, the blacks don't cooperate. For instance, you have a normal population. The people that will cooperate are a minority. Since the whites got rid of all them folks that will not cooperate, all those poor people, all those prostitutes, all those alcoholics, their their profile looks very different. If those poor races were still here, you will see the same thing that occurs among blacks. The same clubbing, the barrel, the excessive drinking, the prostitution, and all those things. But they got rid of that group and have left a clean population. That now we know there's prayers and think that whites are just successful. That was not true because the bulk of whites were poor. I will end there.
Very interesting. I love to learn these kind of things. Thank you, Dr. Watts, for that.
Mm-hmm.
Zethia has a question about colorism in Barbados and certain types of business ownership being colorized. Has that changed?
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think? Are there any businesses in Barbados or in the US or the UK that, are primarily white owned? I would say probably in Barbados, maybe construction is primarily white owned.
What I will say about quickly is this: regardless of where you go, not just in Barbados, what is found normally in terms of the races is the businesses that are supposed to be very sophisticated, supposed to be very profitable, are normally white owned. But if you're looking at a white account, of course, so banking is predominantly white owned. Large scale construction companies predominantly white owned. So what you normally find is that blacks tend to get into the areas that are less profitable, that are seen with less prestige. Like we tend to more. This is not an insult or anything to any person at all because I'm not trying to do that. But you can only get into the areas that you can then to put it that. But I mean, it's almost impossible for a black to get into banking. To own a bank, you or must forget it. It's almost impossible for a black to own an insurance company and things like that. No. So we tend to get into nails, we tend to get into little vending operations, we tend to get because those are the areas that are there. So yes, the polarization is there and it will not change because certain groups have the finance and whatever else to get into some sectors that blacks will not be able to get into, whether it is in England, the States, Barbados. Plain and simple, end of story.
All right, thank you for that. We are kind of over time. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence a little bit. So one of the things
In
I
terms of
came
mine,
across.
you have mine, as you know, if you speak about things like this, I go on until 12 o'clock.
Well, I'm not sure how the others feel about that. And I know for Darius is in the UK, so
I'm here. I'm ready for it. I do have one question that I really want to ask because I feel like a lot of podcasts that talk about this subject and race, whether it's business or not. What are the solutions that we can actually do? So Terry, I'm going to be more like your business partner. Like I already work with a lot of black-owned businesses like Levs and Acta Centurium that's in the UK based and in Newcastle based. But yeah, I need to post them more. I always want everybody to win, but I want to know what solutions we can do if it's just our friendship group that we can make a small difference.
Well, I will say this personally. I've always said you cannot expect a business to succeed because of friends and family. That's one of the biggest mistakes that you can make. If you're hoping your business is going to succeed based on friends and family, 99% of the times you're going to fail. So you really have to know your targeted population, the service or the product that you're offering, and market and cater well towards that. But I will say that in our case, our friends and family have supported our business without us asking. I think we offer such a service, we give such a service that people want to support, because when they come, this is not a regular bar. This is an experience. Um,
Mhm.
we have everything from live music to a Caribbean garden in the middle of concrete Brooklyn, to, drinks that you'll only get on the islands, and rum that you'll only find on the islands. And so, because of that, we've been quite successful, and our friends and family love it and support us without us having to beg them to. And what I've found with a few of my friends, they've actually come to me, and I shouldn't say actually, because I have these kind of good friends, how proud they are of what we're building, what we've done, and they want help. Can you help me? I'm thinking about this business. Can you give me some pointers? Can we sit down and have a conversation? How do I start? How do I get it going? um, a good handful of my friends and my partner's friends and other people, it's been a motivation for them. At least three of them has started their businesses since we've launched because of our example. So that is we I've had a very positive experience with that.
Mhm.
I hope that helps to answer your question a little, Darius.
So basically, you're basically saying that you being a standard example helps motivate people around you, and
Absolutely.
that's your bit. So you still got to shout and praise other people around you, but you personally showing that it can be done, being a success story and being that representation in that business sector to show that everybody else. Yeah, okay, I
Yeah.
like that. I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
And also, before I was an entrepreneur, seeing other Black businesses um, launching and thriving and really growing, that also put a fire in me. Like, boy, if they could do it, I can definitely do it. So I think now we have the opportunity that we're actually helping our Black community as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, to if I may, and I'll be quick about it. I
Sure.
agree with all that you said. What I think that we can do to be beneficial to others is showcase. Um, I am unapologetic in shouting the successes and and celebrating that. But guess what? I also show the struggles.
Yeah.
Um, in my business, I have the opportunity to enter some worlds that normally we would not get to see into, beautiful houses and so forth that many of us might not get to enter. On purpose, I make sure I showcase that to my followers and so forth, invite them in with me and let them enter worlds that, they could never have dreamed of. And what I've found is that in doing that, I get so many comments from people saying that they're rooting for you. People want you to win. Even if they don't have the bravery to step out and try certain things
Mhm.
themselves, they will stand behind you with their pom poms and cheer you on.
Yeah.
And also just seeing that you're a normal person trying to do extraordinary things gives them hopes in whatever they aspire to pursue. It makes it feel all the more attainable. I think we would do a disservice if we showcase our lives entrepreneurially only as the heights, because we could give a false sense of reality of what awaits you. But when you showcase everything and be unapologetic about it, I think that is one of the greatest gifts that we could give to others, because it makes them
Mhm.
know that if she can do this, why can't I step out?
Absolutely.
And it will give the courage to somebody to try
Yeah.
in whatever field they want to pursue. So I think
Absolutely.
I think that's the best thing that we could do.
Yeah.
And I
Agree.
just want to kind of, we've been getting some comments and they were kind of delayed in coming in. So I don't want to have our audience think that we haven't been listening to them. So we have Sadrian Maynard here. Let me see, what is Sadrian saying? Good night, everyone. I'm appreciating this presentation. It's funny that just before coming on to this session, I was listening to the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Sadrian goes on to say as well, give me 1 second. It's time that, well, it's taken a while to load, but basically he's saying that it's time that we stop blaming slavery, and that he feels like we, as Blacks, need to break the shackle and the blame of slavery.
Can I speak on that for a second?
Go ahead.
It's something that I hear a lot. Being in the UK, obviously, majority here is 85% white, I believe, or 87% white. And I think in a fair world, we can blame slavery and get restitution for it and everything like that. But the world is very unfair. And in my community and my friends, yes, it does play an impact, but we must not let it weigh us down, but not necessarily saying, oh, let's forget about it, it never happened. Understand it and, almost embrace it, but don't let it weigh you down. I think is the most important thing about that comment. It's not about, get over it, but understand it and understand, yeah, this is the hand we were dealt, but we need to go above our station, break those barriers, do it ourselves, because no one's coming to do it for us.
No, I agree. Sorry, oops. I agree with your comments because for two reasons, and I will be brief also. Now, yes, I agree. We have to break the shackles of balance and something, but you still have to be careful with that. Meaning this, a white, not a black, a white American president made a very important point, and you can read it in the book by Steiner and Steiner. When they were going to look at affirmative action, he made the point. If you have a race as a 100-meter dash, and you got one runner is running free, and the next one is running with shackles on his legs, and you say, wait, this is unfair, and stop the race, and said, let us take off the shackles and start back now. The person that was ahead of you is still 10 meters ahead of you. So even with the shackles off, you are still at a disadvantage. And that's something you have to understand, as Anthony was bringing up, Darius, because as one writer said, we are all slaves, not slaves, we are all pensioners of our history. Meaning that what you do as a child will impact on your future. And you can't change that. But you can't change what has already happened. So that yes, you could say about breaking, but slavery have made sure that we are 400 years behind, regardless of how you look at it. We are 400 years behind. Now, sorry, go ahead. The next thing I would say that just quickly that again was touched on, and I want to just touch on it just briefly again. No, the next thing you have to understand is this. Darius made another point that is very important that again you have to bring to people constantly. First of all, saying, forget your history, get past already. Nonsense. One of the most successful countries on earth is the Jewish nation of Israel. And all of us know what they said. That will never happen again. They have made a point. What the Nazis did, we will remember and make sure that can never happen again. Unless we are like that too. If we just decide to break slavery, dump it, and don't recognize slavery, it will happen again. Unfortunately. and some people think it is happening again. So I'll
Mhm.
stop there.
All right, so I'll just jump into the comments again. Tony, um, let me see. Tony says, I appreciate what Sharita just shared. What's funny is I came from an entrepreneurial family, grandmother, grandfather, and their siblings. But after that, many of us went for safe jobs. And when I think about it, it kind of reminds me of the fact that a lot of our foreparents felt like they had to work really hard as entrepreneurs and struggle. And so, therefore, it was in their will for us that we have those secure jobs, like jobs in government, or kind of like a doctor, lawyer,
Mhm.
um, kind of thing. So that's Tony's comment. We have Shari. Shari is calling from, well, writing in from Canada. Various schools have a focus on entrepreneurship. There needs to be a shift in the school system to include it way more. Most of us are only trained to be employees.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Tony is saying, very thank you, Dr. Watts. And I think that that was in response to your history lesson. And then we have Shelley Foster, who is also thanking Dr. Watts for that history lesson. What did I say to you guys? Dr. Watts is amazing.
No.
Um, and then we have Kevon Delaney saying, Black people need to learn to pool resources and create bigger businesses. There is power in numbers. And
All right,
what
let
I
me.
want to do is just
Uh,
go
can you
back to
say something
something.
to that just briefly?
But before you go there, I want to actually speak to another comment that talks about collaborative management, and then maybe
Okay.
you can touch on that
Mhm.
as well. So this is Jerry's second comment: is the extended aspect of the question pointed to collaborative management as an
Mm.
important aspect of collective idea generation. Oh, let me put it on the screen. Let me make it easier for you to read as well.
Woo.
So the extended aspect of the question pointed to collaborative management as an important aspect of collective idea generation, collective cost management, collective strategic development, etc., etc. How deeply rooted is this in our educational system? I ask because our cost of managing business may be higher than others to the extent that development dollars are being expended on operating costs due to a lack of collaborative management.
Okay.
What are
Well,
your
I'm gonna
thoughts?
touch the last one. I can touch the first one first. No,
Okay.
I'll leave the last one for future thing. No, I
Mm,
just wanted to touch on the first one first, where the person spoke about
mm,
the pooling resources. And it's interesting because I hear about that a lot, where people speak about the Indians and so on, and how they pool and so on, and it's a fact. But what people don't know is what the Indians do is what is done as a norm in Africa.
mm,
And what we were taught, but we pick it up and run with it in the wrong way. Meaning, what we call the meeting terms are susus.
mm,
What the Indians do is that they pull the money the same way, but it goes to one person for business. And then they pull
mm,
again and it goes to another person for business. In Africa, the same thing is done. They have the meeting terms in Africa and they pool for business. So some person might want to build a mill. So they pool and that person gets the money and they can extend their business and build a mill. They pull against some person together. No, that same thing it came over to us, but we use it to buy a fridge, a
mm,
stove, fly to New York, fly to London, and that's where that we are in trouble. So that we did not understand how the Africans were using the same thing that the Indians and, as we said, Chinese also do. So that is not unique to the Indians or the Chinese. The blacks were naturally pooling, but we in Caribbean got it wrong somehow. And I'll end there.
All right. To talk about collaborative management, I would say collaborative. I realize that collaborative management, from my perspective, being rooted in our educational system, I would say no. That's not something that I see rooted in our educational system, and it's not necessarily something that I think is generally rooted in our society. Um, because of that socialization and the narrative that that Black people cannot be trusted, they always look out for themselves. So that pulling together resources, that teamwork, that coming together to share ideas, um, if there's no trust, then it's not going to happen. And so I think that that's part of the problem. I think it would be a great idea. It will definitely help with things like economies of scale, for example. But there's a level of trust and a need for us to change the narrative, because one of the things that I always say is that we often say Black people do this, Black people do that. And then when you ask the person that says that, okay, well, do you do that? And they're like, no. Like, so I'm like, so you think you're the only person that's different? So the thing is that there are many of us that think that we're different, that we're the special Black person. But the truth is, there are many people who think the same way that we do. And we just need to, find those persons and collaborate with those persons. And one of the things that I came across as I was looking for, as I was doing some research for this episode, is that one of the things that kills Black entrepreneurship is this whole DIY thing. So we feel like we need to do everything on our own. Either we don't trust other people to do it, or sometimes we feel like we don't have the resources to do it. And just today, I was talking to a friend of mine who said, um, also in terms of her, everybody wants to get paid for everything, right? And nobody is willing to, help out to see somebody get to the next stage. Now, there's a lot of thoughts about that. I won't say whether I agree or whether I disagree, but there's a lot of thoughts going around about how things should be done. And there's a lot of mistrust in the community that I think prevents collaboration. Um, so moving on to my next question. I hope that answers your question, Jerry. One of the last things I want to talk about, because we are almost at an hour and a half, is systemic racism. And there's an article that I read that said that Black people in the US, Black entrepreneurs in the US, make about 12 times the amount as Black. Well, they make 12 times more than Black non-entrepreneurs. So Black entrepreneurs make 12 times as much as Black non-entrepreneurs in the US. This is some research that was done by Professor Tiffany Howard at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And one of the things that came out in that research was that if Black entrepreneurs are making that much more money than Black non-entrepreneurs, it's very possible that entrepreneurship is the way to help to close the racial divide, the racial wealth divide. But entrepreneurs face a lot of challenges as it relates to things like maybe funding, for example. What are your thoughts, or what are some of the things that you, or systems that you come against in your profession as it relates to, thriving as a Black entrepreneur?
I can start off by saying the funding aspect for sure. Um, when I once started another business with a partner, a hair business, hair store, of course we had to get the inventory. And I remember excitedly going to the bank. I remember seeing the section mark small business, and I jumped into the line and I explained what we were about to do. And she said, no, we don't, we're not giving out any small business loans. But I said, but the sign says small business. So she says, no, those are just for existing businesses already. And I'm like, this is a bank, right? It says small business. So So you're coming up against that. And no matter what anybody says, let me tell you something. Capital covers a lot of errors. Money covers a lot of flaws. So you find, whether it was a hair store or whatever else, we blacks gone and got all this education, the MBA, the BA, the this, that, and the other. We come up with all the degrees to get it right and do it right. But if you ain't got no money, you can't even start off. And then there's a demographic that might not necessarily have the academic prominence that we do, but money covers a lot of mistakes. So they're able to start. They're able to have some stumbles along the way, but the money is there to pad it and get you back on stream. So I would say without a doubt, money makes a difference. And sadly, it is only now that blacks have come in to their own, where many of us are striving and thriving and so forth. But still, we are not economically where whites have been forever. So how do you get to the next level when you're just trying to depend on your brain, your certificates and documents? Nobody ain't interested in that. You need capital to get started, to keep businesses going, to inject stuff into it. And the business systems out there are not wired to help support you if you're coming lacking in that area. So that's where time and time again we struggle. We can't get off the ground. We're the ostrich that has all these good intentions, but we just cannot take flight.
Mm-hmm. Terry and Darius, outside of funding, is there anything else that you guys can think about?
My answer was going to be funding also.
Yeah.
Because, like Sharita says, you can't launch a business off the ground without it. If you go to a bank and you don't have all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed, no matter how much they say, like Sharita says, you go and they're like, oh yeah, advertising, we're for small business. When you sit down and you get to the nitty gritty, they're not for small business. They're for your credit score. They're for what you own, what you have in the bank, how you can pay this money back. You can go with the best business plan in the world. We tried that too with the bar. They wouldn't even look at us twice. But once our capital came in, right? And they saw then, oh, this is actually a successful business. Look at this capital. Hey, would you like to borrow some money? And unfortunately, that's how it works. And it's the biggest, one of the biggest stumbling blocks. I think a lot of banks today in the US are trying to work on, there's a lot of diversity projects in banks, trying to eliminate a lot of these injustices, especially what the Black community has had to face in order to get any money at all from any bank. And it's a small start, but it's happening. And so that's a good thing. And hopefully we'll start to see a change with a lot of these traditional banks. I think a lot of the online presence of these smaller banks have popped up because they're the ones that would give you an opportunity more than the traditional banks today. And I think that's been a saving grace to a lot of people who are thinking of opening a business. It may come at a lot higher interest rate, but at least you will get some capital, if not all, that you need with a higher interest rate. But at least it can be a start. And I think a lot of these online banks, non-traditional banks, have succeeded because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did interrupt.
Darius,
Have you said?
anything?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No. What I was going to say is that when I did my research, yes, finance it came up as a big issue. Now, because now, one thing that it does, as was brought up by both parties, is that it can stop you from getting into business. But then there were some other issues that were interesting, but not as easy to go. No, I already spoke about perception problems, but there were issues in terms of like politics and so on. And as Karl Marx brought out, economics control politics, not the other way around. Whoever has money, the politicians listen to. And there have been cases in Barbados, as elsewhere, as you all know, where things have been done. Like one example that people speak about is when legislation it was brought in place that virtually shut down the recon decision care business in Barbados, and that occurred because the
Mm-hmm.
established garages had a problem with because their sales fell. Now,
Yeah.
so one of the things that have hindered blacks is there's no political clout because their economic clout is so low, the politicians do not pay you attention. No, and I'm not just speaking about the top politicians. I'm speaking about like, if you look at New York, then just as I say, the person that is at your level, the councilman or whoever, he is going to speak to those businesses that have finance, that have the economic clout. In Barbados, I have a friend that have worked in the Prime Minister's office at the time. Well, he is an entrepreneur and he will hear the Prime Minister and will say, which one? Asking the question back then, have you been able to raise Alan Fields on the phone? I never heard that Prime Minister asked, have you been able to raise Sharita on the phone yet? Because guess what? Alan Fields was the managing director of BSNT, the largest conglomerate in Barbados. Every prime minister has to speak to that group, have to
Mm-hmm.
speak to him. No prime minister is going to phone me, Sharita, or any of us for our opinion on almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
And those, therefore, the laws that are placed in place, the tax system often is found that it goes against small business, not just black small businesses as a norm, because taxation and so on and all those things have been found to favor big businesses in terms of the structure and things that those. And that happens because those folks that have an input in the budget, those folks have an impact on what laws will be passed. Now, just for those that might not believe me, there's a small little book that you can read that was given up free that is with the history of BS&T. It was written by Hoyers. And he spoke about incident when the prime minister back then had raised the taxes on beer. And the chairman of BS&T picked up the phone the prime minister and let him know about, hey, you know that it's going to impact on a bank's beer, which is one of our key subsidiaries. And the book it mentioned, the prime minister just said, okay, give me a few days. And a few days later, some adjustments were made to the particular tax. You, me, or none of us here have that impact at all. But other people
All
have
right.
impact on things.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
Go ahead. No, go
All
ahead.
right. So we have one last question here, and I just want if anybody has the answer, just answer it like in 30 seconds if you can. So Dee says, so blog, good night. We spoke of pushback support from Black, white communities. What about other business owners? How do other Black, white, Asian owners accept or push back your entrance into their worlds? Anybody wants to answer that quickly?
I
No,
can
I take too long.
I can quickly
Okay.
say this. I've been in real estate for 16 years, and I can count under 10 fingers the amount of white locals who have allowed me to list their property in 16 years of doing this. Um, I'm just, you know, you don't want to say that you're not seen as good enough, or, but I think just culturally, they don't know what to do with me. I am not, I don't move in those circles. So it might be more so that, you know, you would like to say it's more so that than color. Um, but it is what it is. 16 years of doing this. And if I do get white clients, they are from overseas, whether buyers or sellers. But when it comes to white locals, I can count under 10 how many have hired me to put their property on the market for sale.
Mm-hmm.
I'll echo a similar sentiment. When I was in the nail and beauty business, a Black-owned woman owning a business like that is something that was owned by the Asians, the Chinese, and the Koreans. They weren't happy about that at all. And the quality of service was totally different to what they were offering. So they also weren't happy about that. And I would say I really needed workers in that industry. And a lot of them at that time happened to be, you know, of the Asian community, Chinese, Korean, you know, people from Taiwan, Vietnamese. And they would show up for the interview thinking it was another Asian person that would interview them until they realized it was a Black woman that owned it. And immediately, the look on their faces, immediately, you can tell they weren't happy. And it was shocking at first, but then I just got used to it. Pushed back into their industry, not accepted. This is not something you do. This is something we do. And the thing is that so many of them is so horrible in the Black community because not only every hygiene standard was broken, but these people would be speaking about their clients in their native language and saying terrible things about their customers. And we would still go and support these people because you could get a cheap service. And they're basically were just laughing at us like, oh, you're idiots. You know what I mean? And I wanted to help break that vicious cycle also. And when I did try to sell my business, my cousin from Barbados was visiting, and she is fluent in Mandarin. I love us Bajans. And she, I had a Chinese couple that was coming to see about the sale of my business. And my cousin just happened to be visiting and was there with me, and they barely spoke English. So she jumped in and spoke Mandarin. I thought they saw a ghost. I thought they saw a ghost. And my cousin is 6'1", dark-skinned, beautiful. And here you are talking to me in Mandarin. The older gentleman actually got very offended. And basically, unfortunately, the sale never happened. But it was almost like there was pushback. Not only are you operating and own the business that's in our industry, but how dare this Black woman speak to us in Mandarin? Mm-hmm. So that and because of that, I never got the quality, the workers that I really needed, the employees I really needed, because a lot of them just refused to work for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I just saw 2 comments. So we're going to wrap up basically. This LinkedIn user is full of praises for Sharita. I don't know if you can see it yet on your side. Mm-hmm. Very true. Sharita has really pushed her way into the real estate market in a very commendable way, and I wholeheartedly support that. You have a fan, Sharita. And then Antonio Arthur. Antonio, I missed the comment that you were referring to. So I think Anton was asking a question, but I'm not really sure who the question was um, referring was being addressed to. So anyway, what we're going to do is just wrap up quickly. Um, any closing comments? Anything that you would like to say before you leave? Also, if you can just let people know um, if they want to reach you, how they can reach you, say on social media. If they want to check out the Rogers Garden, if they want to get some real estate, if they want to get some videography done, and if they just want to have really good entrepreneurial advice from an academic slash business owner. Just let us know how we can reach you and any final comment. I'll start with you, Darius.
I just want to say thank you first of all, because personally I'm going to grow from this conversation, and we came out with like some solutions about being you know, shining stars in our community to let other stars shine. um, I'm a very open book. If you ever want to find me, normally Instagram's the best place to find me, which is DS Media 88. Um, Check out my work. I travel everywhere, even abroad. So if you want me to come to Barbados or the US, I'll come. I'm more than happy to travel. But yeah, I just think this conversation is really good, and we came out with solutions, which is the best thing about having um, conversations, is actually having the solutions, because we can talk until the doctor society is actually tired, but if we don't get solutions from it, what's the point? But I feel like today I'm personally gonna start shouting about my success, and also shouting about other people's success in my community. So I want to thank you guys all for having me, and obviously showing me that solution.
All right. So sure. No, sorry, Dr. Walks.
Okay, I would like to say something quickly. Yes, very briefly also, right? Make sure that I'm brief now. Well, two things when it came out, and as Darrison said, it's part of the solution. He and I think Terry referred to the vicious cycle where things grow and get worse and worse. But then I also heard them say something else, but they did not mention what it was. They spoke about shorting out businesses, and Terry spoke about how it have helped other persons to also get in business and so on, which is a a, a vert, which is a virtuous cycle where as you get success, things get better and better for you. You get more recognized by other persons, by the government, by whoever, and your family, not necessarily Terry, but her children, if her children go into the business, will probably have a much easier time because her family will now be recognized in a different way than she was.
Yeah.
So you have that cycle that is happening, and it is happening because what has been found, and this last thing I will say is black businesses, in terms of a percentage of businesses worldwide, has been increasing at a rate that the gap have actually been getting narrower. Now, of course, it's not happening as fast as we would like, but compared to 50 years ago, then the amount of black business compared to white or Asian is much higher. So there is this virtuous cycle that is happening. The more success that blacks get, the more success that they are getting as it goes on. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Terry. Closing
Well,
comments and how we can reach you.
yes. Well, first, thank you for having me, Roanne. To Dr. Watts, thank you for the history lesson. It's been amazing. I've learned a lot there.
Mhm.
Darius and Sharita, continue success in your businesses. Darius, do not be afraid to shout yourself out and to big up yourself, because when people see that confidence and see your success, it really makes them want to join as well. If you want to reach me, so the Rogers Garden, my partner is the one who manages the social media account. But you can always look us up and follow us at the Rogers Garden on Instagram. My personal Instagram is terrific TNS. That's my handle. So I'll be happy to have conversations, take any questions. For those who have, business ideas that they just want to go over, maybe how to get started, and any obstacles that they're coming across, I am more than happy to lend my support. I think a lot more of these conversations need to happen. We need to continue to support each other, because right now, personally, here in New York City, there's a huge push of the Black community wanting to be entrepreneurs, a huge percentage, from the youngest of the youngest. And it's because everyone is really, I think, first of all, people are seeing the successes, and then everyone is also trying to be very supportive of each other. So if we continue to do that, we can continue to close that gap.
Thanks, Terry. Sharita?
Well, coming from an athletic background, I think that influences my way of thinking. So I'm going to share it with you watching, and hopefully it helps to impact you. But just like running any race, listen, this is the hand we've been dealt. We can't go back in time and fix what has happened to us. It is what it is. But do we remain victims, or do we focus on the finish line? Do we stay in our lane, keep our eyes straight ahead, and run like we have never run before for the prize? The key is to stay focused and not be distracted by all these things around us. We know what's going on. We know what time it is. But if we decide to be victims, well, stop doing what you're doing right now and just play dead. You're wasting time. But otherwise, stay focused and plod in, push through. And my favorite hashtag, be unapologetic. Hashtag unapologetic. When you win, celebrate it to the mountaintop. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. Don't dumb yourself down. Shine bright, 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 bright. And be very careful as to who you keep in your circle, because you need cheerleaders around you. Don't worry about what's going on in the world. You need a very small, intimate circle of cheerleaders, right? That also help you to stay focused on your race. And remember, your race. So that's my encouragement.
Thank you so much, Sharita. We just have some final comments here. Jerry is saying, great discussion, stay focused. Jefald is saying, stay focused and strong, he said. Jefald is saying, I joined late, but great learning experience. And Zethia saying, good night, everyone. Great host, Rowan, and a knowledgeable panel. Thank you for the conversations. And I just want to take the time to thank you so much for making this a reality. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you for the persons that signed on and stayed on. And for those of you who will be watching this on replay, I thank you for that too. This is a topic that is really interesting to me. And I really enjoyed speaking to you, learning from you. And as you know, I can see our guests also had a similar experience. These are the kind of conversations that I want to be having on the Noble Company podcast. Yes, we can talk about general business, but I want to go below the surface, and I want to be having deeper conversations whenever possible. So thank you for being a part of this deeper conversation. I look forward to having many more conversations over the next couple of months. Next month, we'll be looking at women in business in celebration of Women's Month. And so I look forward to seeing you then, where we will have more noble conversations with noble guests. Thank you so much for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.